You got together on the together.
Uh-huh.
So we'll just talk about the work again.
You could still same damn things over again. As far as
I'm going to get you to grind.
You're gonna attack me, eh? Okay.
Yes, I'm going to attack you.
Okay, I'll be ready.
Is it working?
All working, Ross? Lean forward.
You must be comfortable, huh?
That's fine. You're sort of in a more power position.
Oh,
That's fine.
sorry.
That's fine. I don't mind.
No, I don't mind. The working.
Yeah, I remember the time. I used to have a dub of it somewhere.
Right.
I lost it, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Or
right.
not. Yeah.
Anyway, it would be very easy to make a film with it.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, it's such a disclosure of
I never believed a lot of the stuff he said.
No, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
He's an asshole.
Exactly.
But that's interesting.
He's a liar, an asshole. Right?
Yeah, he
I
is.
thought that. Yeah. You got all this in tape? That's fine. Tape is cheap.
Anyway, so
Okay.
let's talk about you being an asshole.
Okay. Well, I'm
being
not.
uptight like an asshole.
Yeah, right. Well, the retentive nature is not really there in the photographs, I don't
Is
think.
that no photograph?
You think so?
It's an attempt to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Not always successful,
And how so? Why aren't I successful at getting away from this?
because you still see the effort of getting away.
Well, that's the pretensions of
And that becomes the art.
Exactly, that is art, because you can't... You were speaking before about the determinism of some of the photographs. I don't think you were using that specific word, but that I think is inherent in the nature of creating the art itself. I mean, it's nice to be able to get away from it, but that would be some kind of primitivism. Some kind of like, I guess even abstract expressionism is trying to get away from that, and the artifice is less, but it's still there.
Well, you see, I think your photographs are all about trying to get out of your brains.
Mm-hmm. And how so?
Because you just aspire to nature, to go down to earth. I mean, to be like earthy, to be mythological, to be nature and all that. But you look at it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's not as if you have like this. Even Bataille was such an intellectual, but he was trying very hard through violence, you know, to just get out of his head. But you kind of, you know, you frame things. You're an editor, a conceptualist, right? Mm-hmm. So you frame it in such a way that you stage your return, you know, to the earth, but you don't get there.
I don't think you can really, in the kind of creative aspect, you can, as you said, lose that retention for a little while, escape momentarily in that kind of grime of the subject material.
Right.
But you're right, it's still in my head. It's still artifice. It's artifice.
Yeah, that's why the aspect we haven't really talked about too much. That's why I wanted to go through grind,
Okay.
put you through the grind. Like the cruelty of it, the kind of impotent cruelty.
Mm-hmm. How so? Why impotent cruelty?
Because it's still the effort of making flesh, you know, exist, you know, making the earth exist, making, you know, and it's like a kid who's like have a temper tantrum, you know, you just have to just hammer on the flesh, bust it, penetrate it, you know, all this, and you never get there, and that's why there is some element of violence, you know, as in the first frustration, you know. And I'm not saying that as an interpretation. I say it's part of the art that, you know, you just trying to impose your mark and hide it, but, you know, bring it out, and it's never finished, but because you never can get back there.
It's interesting, that kind of notion of temper tantrum and the infliction of cruelty in a certain kind of way as being a transitory, again, release.
Right.
And I think it's interesting in the process of creating the photographs, there is that kind of notion of cruelty only because it's so difficult for the subject in the photographs normally to even pose in these difficult situations.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear them whining and complaining and...
Are the models?
Yeah, the models.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I had a sense of that, but tell me more about it.
Well, they do because there's no real blood in them or anything like that. There's no real cruelty or any stretch of the imagination. But it's
But
like,
through the imagination, there is a lot of stretch.
yes, it's very imaginatively. It's playing against that kind of, as you said, the infliction,
Yeah.
and that's what actually happens in the photographic shoots. The shoots are quite revealing in themselves. I think one of the photographs that you thought I didn't correct you because I didn't want to interject during the last interview was the notion of the those tied feet of the lamb. And that was an act of cruelty that I inflicted upon a live lamb to get the photograph. It wasn't very much cruelty. It wasn't really hurt in any kind of stretch of imagination, but it still had become traumatized to the camera, this young defenseless animal.
But the result is not so traumatic. It's very strange because it's so archetypal. It's like you see powerful shoulder, whether it's there or not, and you see this lamb there, and maybe you just help the lamb, not you don't sacrifice it. There's an ambiguity there.
Well, that's exactly, and that's interesting again, the parallel from your interpretation of the photograph and the actual shooting of that. I actually ended up buying a live lamb for the shoot, taking it out of the slaughterhouse chain, bought it from the kind of auctions where it was going to be dead within a day or something, and then shot it and then freed it to a place where it wasn't going to be slaughtered. And that was like that Christmas week. So it became it was a symbolic gesture on my own part.
You freed it where?
I gave it to a petting farm.
Petting farm?
Yeah, well, it's the only place you can free a lamb, really.
A petting farm for kids to pet?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, how cute.
Yeah. I mean,
you're trying to redeem yourself, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of the
guilt. Jewish guilt.
Jewish guilt. Christmas gesture, right?
Right.
But, we freed Christ this Christmas. We didn't celebrate. Right. Yeah. He was born on Christmas. I always get that confused.
Well, you Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the image of the cross is there.
It's there. And that's why I think it was interesting also in your interpretation of this being religious. I mean, why we use religious in a larger sense is the mythological systems, I think, of those. Like I've always, been more interested in Catholic systems than the Judaic systems.
Because you're closer to it. I mean, we all are. If you're Judaized Jews,
exactly.
What do we have around?
What do we have?
Yeah, we have Christianity. Yeah.
Well, the new religion now has become for the Jewish people. No, it's the Holocaust. It's become the religion.
Yes, that's true.
For the Jew.
And it's there.
Yeah.
The when that was that, right?
The when was as much about loss and AIDS as much as about the Holocaust. And it's funny.
Really?
Yeah, and it's funny how that piece is being interpretively dominated by the notion of the Holocaust as
because
opposed
of the accumulation.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And that's the metaphor which you implied, which is so much up front that it dominates.
Yeah.
And I think even in the part that you don't see there, the when piece has as part of it an entire burnt tree, which I took down a cherry tree about 30 feet tall. A live tree.
Branch?
No, a live tree, a whole tree.
But where's the tree?
You don't see in the photographs. It's an installation. So I took this cherry tree, cut it into sections, and burnt it. And labeled and drew out each section on a piece of vellum and labeled it and constructed the whole tree as a drawing first, one to one, and then burnt the tree and reconstructed it on the gallery floor from his original drawings. So very methodical, like a 6-month process.
From mythological to methodical.
And again, that
have to be methodical, but mythology.
But that again is the kind of mechanized destruction.
Right.
Again, that's a reverberation of the Holocaust. So that piece became really, as you imply, even the title "When." I didn't even know psychologically at the time that the Primo Levi book had the same.
So it was in your head, or it came afterwards?
Which part?
The
Holocaust?
The Holocaust in that series?
No, it's more about loss and AIDS.
Yeah.
And the Holocaust obviously dominates in the interpretive level of it.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's massive. Yeah.
And that's what's so impossible with it.
Yeah, and it seems to be predicated on that, and therefore the meaning becomes more enclosed, which is something you never really mentioned in this interview too. I like the meanings to be expansive than
Well, the reference to the Holocaust, it's not massive, it's a bit like when Deleuze-Guattari talk about the masses. The masses are molecular. Classes are molar, right? They're like big structures. But in the Holocaust, it's like masses of people. Each of them are individual, and that's what makes it mind-blowing. If it was like a nondescript, thing, that'd be okay. But it's like everything can be individualized down to the last detail, and that's what makes it so unbearable.
And that again was one of my concerns with that piece that I remember very distinctively, was how to get this kind of mass notion of community destruction and still get the individual and the individual aspect.
The tree piece.
Yeah. So that was mass. And the tree became individual. The tree became to represent the individual. And the piles were the collective nature. Also outside the gallery for the same exhibition, I took large tree stumps and roots, huge ones were 20 feet in diameter, and created a pile of these kind of roots and stumps that was like 25, 30 feet tall. They took the ends of the stumps and put tar on them. So it was this kind of regeneration or healing that was impossible from something which was already destroyed. It was very ugly. It was trying to be sort of grotesque, but it had an elegance, as though those pile of butterfly wings and parts became very elegant.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that it comes out so much explicitly, because I always think of you and your work as a, in some way the return of the repressed, and then the repression of the return. You know what I mean?
Can you explain a little?
The return of the repressed, that there's all these, Holocaust stuff that you kind of, it's not really your experience, but in some way it has impressed on your on your senses, right? And then so it comes back, but you're not really into it. It impregnates you, but it's not really something you want to recognize. So you formalize it, you frame it, you organize it, and then you look at it at a distance and you can laugh at yourself doing it.
I don't think it's a laugh at myself doing it. That's where I disagree, because in a sense, like, there's not really...
Or laugh at people looking at it for the form.
Yeah, people can
There's
misinterpret...
an element of irony somewhere.
Well, that's what I thought that in my work, since you have this kind of collection of work here. The ironic is very minor. I think in the Vanitas pieces, it's the only one where there's a certain kind of irony.
Yeah, it's true. It was truer before, in the 80s.
The 80s were very ironic, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And I keep saying my work changed in the kind of pictorial space that happened around the 90s. But I think as much, the denial of irony.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I mean, it's like the lack of humor too, because irony, and what you say, maybe dark irony, but it is kind of that twist, that humorous.
Yeah, it has a distance, and you look down on things, so you're in control.
That's true too.
And here there's some sort of, you still want to be in control, but there's not as much of a distance. So it's getting close.
It's getting close, and that's why I think was really curious about this kind of psychological thing, because I finished a piece, for example, Fissure, and I would say to myself, what the hell just happened here? And I don't know if this, and I can't analyze it psychologically, which I would do. I would say, is this kind of correlative to my own existence, or is it kind of, again, a mythological or larger meaning? And I seem to go back in the kind of repressed way that you talked about and say that it's a larger meaning. But it has, as Lynn implied, it probably comes out of some kind of aesthetic subjective position too.
Yeah. So this is where the cruelty come in, because like that's an attempt to regain, it's like attempt to regain control. And when it gets too close, then you just formalize it and archetype it, and so that you can look at it at a distance and say, well, it has a larger, or I managed to make a form out of it. Something like that. But no, it was nice that Lynn didn't over-interpret it.
She was more on the surface of the kind of photographic aspect.
Right. Well, because also she didn't get as deeper in the pictures, because she hadn't really had time to do the work.
I can believe that. Yeah.
Right. So she was looking at it from a distance.
I think it's important too that really, I wasn't going to encourage this, but every time I see a photograph, I see the photographer shooting the photograph.
Right.
I see the photographer there. That again is the psychological too that I implied.
Right.
And in these, my attempt is not to be there. In a lot of instances, I would say, I don't want to talk about other people's work, but Cindy Sherman wants to be there. She has to be there.
Right.
And I don't want to be there, in a sense. Maybe that goes back to your repression.
Right.
Again.
Right. Well, it's like the ultimate temptation is to be dead, but to look at it.
Americans love that.
Yes.
Every 6
that's
months.
That's what photography is about, really. In a sense. And that's when we talk about the photographer. It's like, writing. That's what art is about. To be dead and still to be alive and look at it and have a career.
Isn't that what art is all about, really,
yes,
ultimately?
Ultimately.
I think I'm almost positive it is, because the more that I fear death or get petrified of this kind of concept, the more all of a sudden I just go out and do some more work.
Yes.
And it's obviously a futile attempt.
Yeah, it's like Hannah Wilke. She turned death into the last act.
Yeah.
And she was faithful to herself. But that's, I guess, every thing is always about that, right?
That's a problem, though.
Yeah. Well, maybe death will disappear one day. So it won't be any art.
Well, my son, who's 12 now, asked me, because Do you think they'll have immortality in my lifetime?
Well,
I said, you got to have a chance.
yeah.
We don't have a chance.
So he doesn't want to become an artist then?
Who knows? He hasn't found that solution yet. I'm not going to give him
well,
that.
you know, if you're immortal, then may as well enjoy the enjoy that you have.
Would you rather be an artist, or would you rather have real immortality, physical?
Me? I'd rather be an artist.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I'm not an artist, so I can still have something to desire.
I see.
I try my hand at it here and there, but it's not.
Not for you.
No, it's not. That's not the choice I made.
No.
You know, unfortunately, you can't backtrack.
No, that's the weird. Not the weird. That's the linear part of life.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's why you can try and cover your traces as you do, but when you cover your traces, you leave others' traces.
Yeah. Well, a good investigator will find us.
Yes.
And we hope they're there too.
But that's what I was emphasizing, the part that there's something mischievous about it. There's a tantrum, the kid, and they say hide and seek aspect. So it's all it's not primal, it's kind of, like a childish impulse, playing with things and making you pay for understanding.
I make you pay. I make the audience pay.
Yeah, I know. So there's a cruelty that's represented, and there's a mental cruelty that's really behind it. And it's part of, and that's in a relationship with the audience. And the model, in fact, you torture your models in order to torture the audience. And what better position to have? And then you disappear, you don't even take it for yourself. Say, well, I don't want to be there.
I see. And now I finally understand your mischievous aspect. Because,
right.
And yeah, it's true. It's maybe selfish as much as mischievous.
It's a the most selfish is a selfishness without a self.
But no, I haven't got that one. I have a self still. So.
Oh, no, but you want to be away from it.
I try. But
you want to be like God. I set it up. I torture this, I torture that. Now deal with it. Yeah? But you need an audience. God has an audience that's already made. That's
He's already made.
We have to make the audience at the same time as we make the art, and that's tough.
How are we doing?
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was going.
I thought we were going to pick up the phone. Yeah. So any last comments about this? I think.
Well, we pretty much cornered it. I mean, we try to get to as many sides as possible, right? Mythological, religious. I think the cruelty thing is the one we emphasize less, which is kind of nice because it was the most obvious. I mean, you have so many bruises. I mean, even when you have a little bit of skin, with like a mosquito bite. I mean, how do you get that? Or you just stay in Toronto and you have it, right?
Well, sometimes.
I still remember the mosquito helmet you told me about.
Yes.
It freaked me out.
Well, we've been going to my place in the country and having to wear complete clothing and mosquito hats and everything else.
Right.
Yeah, it's very frightening. That's very cruel. That's nature at its absolute cruelest.
Yeah.
And how I get these marks. Sometimes I inflict these marks, and sometimes I just find them on the body that I'm using.
The one with a scar, is it a real scar?
That's a real scar, and you're very accurate and I thought it was quite perceptive in the notion that you found it was a heart operation.
Yeah.
And what is there even is very subtly in the photograph is a little blur in the chest where lips had previously been on the chest. So
really?
Because that was where I was trying to get a photograph with lips on his chest with a scar.
Oh, so did you beat your model too?
No, the model. I had two models.
Oh, there's two models.
There's two models, and so therefore the other model's not even in the shot.
I see.
But finally, when I finished the photograph, I decided this is what I wanted more: the purity, just the absence of the body, and where the lips were touching. Was much more interesting than having it right there.
Oh, the aesthetic of the disappearance.
Yeah, it was very, very subtle.
Maybe you should have another show with everything you haven't shot.
Or haven't shown.
Shot.
The ones I shot.
Everything you haven't shot.
No, what's more interesting is the ones that I shot that I never show. And
they're too good, but they don't fit.
They don't fit, exactly.
With the rejects. You will have like an exhibition of the rejects.
Sometimes the rejects, and more often than not, are better photographically in a classical sense of photography than the ones I use.
Yeah, it's like what you call the museum with the accidents.
Yeah. They're more dynamic, the ones I use.
Right. Oh, you mean The one you use for your shows.
Yes, or something. There's some element about them.
Yeah, that's what I call transition, metamorphosis, becoming. Yeah, they all kind of try to escape in a sense. I mean, that would be an interpretation. I was kind of being generous. I was saying, metamorphosis, becoming, changes, and all that. But in a sense, it's made part of when something is not hidden and covered with brambles or dirt and all that. Then it's shifty. You're a very shifty person.
Okay.
I was trying my best.
I didn't know. I mean, the ultimately shifty person would not know.
No, but you try to you try not to show your hand. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Because I think you're a bit afraid to be caught. That's the interpretation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm trying, as I said before, hide myself as a photographer. I'm tired of all the photographs, looking at a photograph and seeing the photographer shoot. So I try to disappear myself, so I get what I would call more universal, or just have the visceral impact of the photograph.
But you're escaping the transcendence now.
Yeah, but you can't really do it, because even when you read a novel, for example, and it's not autobiographical, everybody reads it, it's slightly autobiographical.
Yeah. Well, anyway, someone wrote the word, and someone did the picture. I mean, as in my crime film, I did the crime, I'll do the time. There's always someone who did it.
True.
And you are the one who scarified or clarified or did the thing to these poor models where they're shouting behind.
It's my fault.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
So you don't like your models?
Oh no, I like my models.
They take it lightly or what? They grumble?
They grumble as
Because it's all like twisted.
It's twisted, hard to hold those poses, like putting all those twigs and lie down. And
right.
My next one's going to be models lying.
So the cruelty on the picture is really a mild reflection of what you inflict on them. Right?
Yes, it comes through. I remember doing a portrait of this woman, and she couldn't get a babysitter. She had a child there, and the child was a very close up on the face, no background, nothing, just the
Of
face.
the child?
No, the woman.
Yeah.
And it was treated, but her child was pulling at her during the photograph. You can see it vividly.
On her face?
Yeah, on her face, and just the.
And that's what you wanted. That's what you wanted to capture.
No, I didn't want it. It was too much. I was trying to be complimentary for this one.
I see.
And the same here. When you don't see the body,
You'll be credited for that one.
yeah, for pulling for the cruelty again. But I think it's interesting in these two, where you said when you see parts of a body, you can actually extrapolate what the whole rest of the body is doing.
Yeah. Trying its best to disappear.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tough. Always comes back.
So
So